Star Diddly Wars! Dum 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 Star Wars dum 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 Chapter Again, let's all pretend to be clever and just know how to do Roman numerals while secretly knowing that that's 5 because of Star Wars. Finn looks over the top of a dune and sees this film's hive of scum and villainy. Not really much to report in the book version of this bit, but it's the sort of scene I like to find in a novelisation because Alan gives us a bit of extra detail, a bit of reflection on the characters' situations. Here, Finn is clambering to the top of a dune to get a good vantage point, and Alan gets in some of the frustration of trying to climb up rolling sand that keeps sending you back down again. But something even more interesting happens after the little paragraph break here at the top of the next page. You see, watching the film, we are shown a Finn who, from the very beginning of the film, is a reluctant stormtrooper who isn't happy with what they're being ordered to do. If we want to say that he was anything other than this, that he was ever a full, like, in his heart stormtrooper, then we have to do it with a certain amount of inference and assumption. But here comes a scene where General Hux is examining Finn's old records, and as far as I remember, more clearly than the film, the book establishes that Finn was never anything other than an ordinary stormtrooper. And Hux really goes deep here. There is nothing on record, and everything is on record because everything is filmed. They've got cameras all over the inside of the Star Destroyers and so on. There is nothing on record about the slightest facial expression out of place in Finn's history. Nothing so much as a gesture. Ever. Now, in the film, Hux and Phasma say this to each other, but, you know, you're watching a film, you never know if you're just listening to the opinions of these two people, or, you know, that they've just never found anything. You could just be listening to two people lost inside their own ego about the way that they train stormtroopers, making assumptions about Finn, and that actually, maybe he never was on their side. But no, here in the book, it's made very, very clear, 100%, that he was, in fact, a faceless stormtrooper. All his life, and he's just suddenly switched for reasons they can't understand. But in barges Kylo Ren, wanting to talk about that droid he wants to find. But General Hux reminds him that their real mission, given to them by Supreme Leader Snoke himself, who might be enjoying his first name drop here in the book, might not be, can't really remember, because it's been a while since I've done one of these videos, sorry about that. But the real mission isn't getting the droid, it's preventing the Resistance from getting the map that is inside the droid, and they can do that by either capturing the droid or just destroying it. He's not interested, Snoke, in them getting the map. He's just interested in the Resistance not getting it. Perhaps Snoke already knows where Luke Skywalker is. Perhaps he knows very well, and that's a little detail of his plan that we don't know yet. Well, anyway. You could see my mouth just then, like trying to finish a sentence so it could reach over and get some tea. Hux stands up to Kylo and makes it clear that he isn't afraid of him. He accuses Kylo of being obsessed with this map in particular, and he drives the point home with a comment about his personal interests undermining Snoke's orders. All of which I believe is in the film. But as I say, it was made a bit clearer, I felt, in the book that Finn really used to be a stormtrooper through and through. Back to Jakku, when we get the bit where Finn is stumbling through the town and he drinks out of the trough of the Hapabor, apparently that thing is. The book, I think, makes him a bit more sort of sunbeaten than the film did. I mean, obviously, you know, the fact that he was stumbling around going water and drinking out of the trough communicated it perfectly well, but here he's absolutely, you know, he's on the brink of death, and people are looking at him and either tutting in sympathy or just pointing and laughing at him. And next is the scene where, in the film, Finn goes through the sort of marketplace or whatever that is, and he sees Rey being attacked by some thugs, presumably the thugs that Unkar Plutt was on the phone to earlier. Now, I could be wrong, I'm going back a while now, but I seem to remember that that's the way it plays out in the film. Finn is looking and he sees her in the distance being attacked, and he goes, oh no, she's being attacked, and then, oh, she seems to be holding her own perfectly well. But in the book, we get a scene from Rey's point of view where she's talking to BB-8, and BB-8 tells her a few things about what's going on. It seems to be asking her what she already knows about things like the First Order, and she says that she's heard the rumours about an attack on a village nearby, and BB-8 tells her that it was there. The thugs show up and make themselves known, and there's a bit of back and forth threatening between them, and then the attack starts proper, and then we do cut to Finn's POV as he watches the attack. But never mind that for now. What do we learn from the little bit from Rey's POV? Well, not all that much, except that BB-8 is frantically trying to thank her for not selling it, and is trying to explain why it was so important that she didn't. So we can't infer that at any time on their walk BB-8 filled her in on the details, and that's why she didn't sell it to Unkar Plutt. No, she really, as the book has it at least, she just didn't want Unkar Plutt to get his own way, essentially, and that's why she gave up all that money. It doesn't seem quite convincing to me, but then this is a story about people with sort of unreasonable amounts of kind of honour and goodness and so on, so fair enough. But the other thing is that in this rumour, it was a sacred village that was attacked, so that was a sacred village where that went down. But now the thugs have got the droid and are attacking Rey. Finn wants to do something to help, but, you know, she's holding her own perfectly well, so instead he pulls the bag off the droid and recognises it. Suddenly he sees that it's orange! So it was important that Poe told him that it was an orange droid. Now, in the film, he's watching from a distance, isn't he? And then she kind of talks to BB-8, who seems to say, it's him, he's got the jacket. And she gets up and starts running towards him. There's all those extended, like, Monty Python Holy Grail shots of her going like, and Finn going, ah, and her going, and Finn going, ah, and then he runs away. In the book, he seems to be right up next to her. He seems to go over there, and then he pulls the sack off BB-8 and goes, it's the orange droid. And then the orange droid goes, blah, 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 and Rey goes, blah, 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 and runs after him. Like, he talks to her before she chases after him. He's right there. So I wonder if that was something that was in the screenplay, and then just J.J. Abrams just thought, well, it'd be funnier if she runs after him. So then Finn, at the business end of Rey's staff, gives a complete account of why he's here and everything that's happened to him up to this point. And I rather suspect that in the film, which, you know, I'll watch after I finish this series, in the film, his little speech here is a bit more scant. But here he goes into quite some detail. And then Finn mentions that the droid contains the map to Luke Skywalker, and she goes, Luke Skywalker? I thought he was a myth. Now, what we don't know is he a myth that everyone's heard about, like King Arthur or something? Or is it just someone that she's been told about for reasons? Either way, he's become a myth in just the space of a few decades, so we can assume that everything he did in the original trilogy was done rather under the radar. He shot down the Death Star, but that was probably attributed in just the public consciousness to, you know, the Rebel Alliance generally. He was there for the death of the Emperor, but who knows what the official version of that story was? Maybe they portrayed Darth Vader as a traitor even among villains. Maybe nobody even knows that Vader was even there when the Emperor died. And this is the sort of question they're probably going to have to answer in the next film, because with Kylo Ren being so obsessed with Darth Vader, we need to know what he thinks Darth Vader did. You know, the deeper we get into his story, in the first film, he and various other characters are just kind of seen almost from a distance, just sort of, they're almost mythical themselves. But as we get deeper into them, we are going to need to know what they think is going on, what their motivations are, and at that point, we are going to have to start to find out what people, the galaxy at large, thinks happened in the times of the original trilogy. Who do they think Luke Skywalker was, if they've even heard of him at all? Who do they think Darth Vader was? Kylo Ren, as far as I remember, doesn't give us any clues to this in the film. We don't know if he knows about Darth Vader because everybody does, or because his parents specifically told him. We don't know if his parents specifically didn't tell him. They may have tried to withhold the stories. You know, they might have done. Maybe they're not telling him about that was what caused him to turn against them in the first place. So we don't know what the official, or at least the widely known version of the story of Darth Vader's life is. So we don't know what Kylo Ren is referring to when he says that he'll finish what you started. Well, the interesting thing is we're going to get a little clue at the very start of the next chapter, which I don't think comes from the film. www.youtube.com/team Dum da da dum da da dum dum Star Wars dum da da dum da da dum dum Star Wars do diddle doo 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 Star Wars do blah 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 do diddle doo doo Star Wars do do blah 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 do diddle doo 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 Star Wars ba da 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 Star Wars